the high school everyone thought was perfect. On the outside, Ridgeway Heights High School looked like a brochure come to life. Brick buildings washed in morning light, manicured lawns trimmed with almost obsessive precision, trophy cases polished so often they reflected back a version of success that felt permanent, untouchable. Parents drove by and slowed down just enough to admire it. Realtors mentioned it in hushed, approving tones. Guidance counselors from neighboring districts spoke its name the way people talk about Ivy League schools, carefully, respectfully, with a hint of envy. This was the school everyone wanted their kid to attend. The school that produced winners. The school that never failed. At least that's what everyone believed. What no one saw, what no one wanted to see, was the cost of perfection. And the students who paid it. Ridgeway Heights didn't just educate students, it marketed them. From the first day of freshman orientation, the message was clear. Excellence wasn't optional, it was expected. Banners hung from the ceilings, top 1% in state rankings, 98% college acceptance rate, national merit scholars, 12 and counting. The principal, Dr. Lawrence Bell, delivered his welcome speech with the ease of a man who had said the same words for 20 years. Here, he told the parents packed into the auditorium, we don't believe in limits, we believe in potential. Parents applauded, students shifted in their seats. Because potential at Ridgeway Heights had a definition. And it wasn't flexible. Freshman schedules were built like blueprints for future resumes. Honors classes weren't an achievement, they were a starting line. AP courses weren't goals, they were requirements disguised as opportunities. And if you fell behind, you didn't fail, you disappointed. Maya Chen arrived at Ridgeway Heights with a spotless academic record and a quiet determination that made teachers smile. She had been the valedictorian of her middle school. Her parents, immigrants who worked long hours and spoke often about sacrifice, believed this school was her reward. Maya believed it was her responsibility. Her locker was neat. Her notes were color-coded. Her backpack weighed more than it should because she refused to leave anything behind, just in case. In class, she answered questions with precision, never too fast, never too slow. Teachers praised her for being consistent, which at Ridgeway Heights was code for safe. But consistency had a price. Every night Maya sat at her desk until midnight, sometimes later. Homework blurred into studying, studying into panic. She slept in fragments, 20 minutes here, 40 minutes there, always with one eye on the clock. She told herself it was temporary. Everyone did. Ridgeway Heights loved its success stories. They were displayed everywhere. Photos of alumni who had gone on to elite universities, athletes who had signed national letters of intent, students who had won science fairs or debate championships. But the stories were edited. No one mentioned the student who transferred out sophomore year after a breakdown. No one talked about the senior who disappeared halfway through spring semester and never returned. Those names were quietly removed from yearbooks. Their lockers reassigned. Their stories forgotten. Perfection required selective memory. Lucas Reed didn't fit the Ridgeway Heights mold, not perfectly. He was smart, undeniably so, but his intelligence was uneven. Brilliant in history and literature, average in math, terrible at chemistry. He asked questions teachers didn't always know how to answer. Lucas had transferred from a public school across town, where grades mattered, but not like this. At Ridgeway Heights, he felt like a visitor who hadn't learned the local language. His first report card came back with 2 B's. 2. The guidance counselor called him in the next day. "We just want to make sure you're adjusting," she said kindly, sliding the paper across the desk. "This school can be demanding." Lucas nodded. He understood the subtext. Do better. Once a month, Administrators gathered in a closed-door meeting known unofficially as the rankings review. Spreadsheets were projected onto screens. Numbers were analyzed with surgical focus. Test scores, GPA distributions, college acceptance projections. Students weren't names here. They were data points. Dr. Bell leaned back in his chair as department heads discussed concerns, stress complaints, increased absences, a noticeable rise in anxiety-related nurse visits. "We're aware of the pressure," he said calmly, "but our outcomes speak for themselves." No one argued. Outcomes were everything. By junior year, the cracks began to show. Students stopped eating lunch in the cafeteria, choosing instead to study in stairwells or bathrooms. Teachers assigned group projects, then quietly encouraged competition within them. Sleep deprivation became a badge of honor. 3 hours last night, someone would brag. Lucky, another replied. Maya noticed her hands shaking during tests. Lucas started skipping chemistry, choosing the library instead, where at least the silence didn't judge him. No one asked if they were okay, because no one wanted the answer. It happened on a Tuesday. Fire alarms blared during second period. Students filed out, irritated more than alarmed, phones already in hand. Whispers spread quickly. An ambulance. A stretcher. A sophomore girl no one knew well enough to describe beyond, quiet and nice. The administration released a statement by the end of the day. A medical situation occurred. The student is receiving care. Classes will resume as normal. And they did. The next morning the lawn was trimmed again. The trophies still gleamed. College counselors still smiled. But something had shifted. Lucas stopped trying to blend in. He questioned grading policies. He asked why one failed exam could erase a semester's worth of work. He wrote an editorial for the school paper titled, "When Excellence Becomes Harm." It was never published. The faculty advisor suggested revisions, then delays, then silence. Lucas learned an important lesson. At Ridgeway Heights, critique was acceptable, as long as it didn't threaten the brand. Maya's breaking point didn't look dramatic. There was no shouting, no tears in public. It happened quietly, in the middle of an AP calculus test. Her vision blurred, the numbers swam, her pen slipped from her fingers, clattering onto the desk. The room tilted. When she came to, she was in the nurse's office, a thin blanket over her shoulders, fluorescent lights humming softly above. "You fainted," the nurse said gently, "probably stress." Maya nodded, ashamed. The nurse handed her a pass. "You can retake the test during lunch." That spring, Ridgeway Heights hosted its annual College Pathways Night. Auditoriums overflowed. PowerPoint slides promised futures mapped with certainty, SAT strategies, early decision timelines. Resume building extracurriculars. One parent raised a hand. "My daughter hasn't slept more than 4 hours a night in months," she said. "Is this really necessary?" The room went quiet. Dr. Bell smiled, practiced and reassuring. "Excellence requires commitment," he replied, "but we also encourage balance." The applause returned. The question disappeared. The second incident couldn't be minimized. This time it happened off campus, but the student's name was known. A top-ranked senior, a scholarship athlete, someone whose photo hung in the hallway. Rumors exploded. Parents demanded answers. Local news vans parked across the street. Ridgeway Heights issued another statement, carefully worded, legally approved. But the illusion had cracked. And once cracked, it couldn't be repaired. An independent review was launched. Anonymous surveys revealed what students had whispered for years: chronic stress, untreated anxiety, fear of failure so intense it felt physical. The numbers told a different story now. Yes, test scores were high. But so were burnout rates. So were transfers. So were counseling referrals quietly outsourced to avoid internal records. Perfection, it turned out, was expensive. Lucas graduated, not with honors but with relief. He chose a state university, one that valued discussion over dominance, curiosity over competition. Maya took a gap year. For the first time in her life, she slept. She read books without highlighting them. She learned that her worth didn't rise or fall with a number on a transcript. Ridgeway Heights remained open. The banners came down, replaced by new slogans: Wellness Matters, Whole Student Success. Whether they meant it was still unclear. People still talk about Ridgeway Heights. Some say it changed, some say it didn't change enough. But the truth is simpler and harder to accept. A perfect school doesn't exist, because students aren't products. Pressure isn't motivation. And success that costs your well-being isn't success at all. The high school everyone thought was perfect. It wasn't evil. It wasn't cruel. It was just built on the lie that excellence and humanity can't coexist. And that lie, quiet, polished, and widely accepted, did far more damage than anyone wanted to admit. Sometimes the most dangerous places aren't the ones that look broken. They're the ones that look flawless. For more stories that examine the hidden cost of success, moral pressure, and the truths we often overlook, subscribe to the channel. And if this story resonated, consider liking and sharing.